Hey guys, our 5-star journey continues, and today we're gonna take a look and figure out how to play the characters Bkornblume, Charlie and BabyBlue. Starting off with the character Bkornblume, so let's jump into battle. First of all, her insight says that whenever you would attack an enemy with her that has a debuff attached to them, you would deal 20% more damage. Also, if an enemy attacks you that has a debuff attached to them, you would take 20% less damage from that enemy. And that leads us into our incantation number 1, which hits all enemies, and they will have their reality defense reduced by 15%, and they will take 15% more damage in general. So 15% more damage to all of your enemies with everything that you do, plus an additional 15% more damage to them from reality damage. Cool. And remember, plus 20% damage against enemies that have a debuff attached to them. Then we have her incantation number 2, which deals 135% reality damage to 2 enemies. That is exactly the number that you have to hit for a mass attack concerning 5 stars. But if the target has a debuff attached to them, then this attack would even deal 45% more damage. So before you ever would attempt to deal damage to your opponents with Bkornblume, or even with your allies as well, you might say, you will always use this incantation number 1 debuff first, no matter what. Okay, now all of this stuff is already not too shabby, right? But all of this is just a bonus and not the true reason why you would ever play Bkornblume in the first place, right? It doesn't really do anything. It does pretty low amounts of damage because Bkornblume's stats are not the highest. And yeah, you shred the enemy defense by 15% and so on. You know, it's not bad, but it's like not amazingly broken either or something like that. So let me show you the reason why Bkornblume is one of the best and one of the most useful 5-star characters in this game. And that is her ultimate. It's a one target attack. It deals the 550% damage that all 5 stars that have an ultimate that only hit one target should do. So check. Now the big deal and the big kicker, and what makes Bkornblume such a unique and such a viable and fantastic character, is the fact that you inflict seal for 3 rounds onto the target you hit with this. Seal it means the enemy cannot use their ultimate for 3 rounds. That is a whole lot of time that you lock your enemy out of using their ultimate ability. And this is absurdly good. No other character in this game does something like that. Yeah, Le Sauce does pretty much kind of the same thing, you might say, because she reduces the Moxie by 5 from your opponent, but you require all portraits for her there, and it doesn't really lock them out for 3 rounds. If an opponent accumulates Moxie, like more than 1 Moxie per turn, then Le Sauce would lock them out for like 1 or 2 rounds. But no matter how much Moxie your opponents generate, it's always 3 rounds with Bkornblume. And as I said, like no other character in this game does that as good as Bkornblume does. And there are quite a few stages, even in the hardest content in the game, that require you to stop your opponent from using the ultimate at all costs. And with Bkornblume in your character roster, you have the best character in the entire game to do exactly that, to lock your opponent out of using the ultimate. And that is not even speaking in the context of 5 stars. This is speaking in the context of the entire game. And yeah, that is the reason why Bkornblume is extremely good. And this is how you play Bkornblume. You always use your buff. The debuff here, this one that shreds the reality defense and more. And then you use your incantation number 2, not really to deal a whole bunch of damage or anything, but to accumulate Moxie as fast as possible, so that you accumulate 5 Moxie with Bkornblume before your opponent would accumulate this 5 Moxie, and then you lock him out of using his ultimate for 3 rounds, right? And then in these 3 rounds, you can use your other characters to burst that thing down. And yeah, that's how you do it. Also, you can use your incantations, right? In the span of the 3 turns that you apply seal to your opponent to unlock your ultimate again, to constantly keep that seal onto your opponent so he can never use his ultimate. That is also a thing you could do and something you have to keep in mind at least. And that's about it, right? Use your debuff, use your incantation number 2 to deal damage, do that to accumulate Moxie, and then seal your opponent away with your ultimate. And that's it, right? That's how you play Bkornblume. So now we can move on to Charlie. So Charlie is pretty simple and straightforward. So first of all, her insight says that whenever you would be above 50% HP percentage, you would deal 20% more damage. Cool, that's what you pretty much always will do. But if your HP would drop below 50%, then you would take 15% less damage and get critical hit rate increased by 20%. So yeah, something to keep in mind, but not really something you have to play around too much. It's just a bonus. And then we have his incantation number 1 that says you deal 200 mental damage, because you will always deal 20% increased damage, so that's 200. And if the caster's HP is below 50%, then you would deal 60% more mental damage. Pretty incredible. Then her incantation number 2 says it's a 1 target attack, it deals 200, right, remember? And if the caster has a buff attached to him, he deals again 60% more damage. So that is already a reason why you would want to play Charlie together with a character that has a buff incantation, that can buff Charlie, right? That's not too much to ask for, so it's actually pretty good. And you can already see that Charlie, she hits the numbers perfectly, and she has even good beneficial effects attached to those incantations that already hit the damage that they would need to. So and it is an increase by 60%, right? That is actually pretty incredible, and this is one of the big reasons why Charlie is one of the best main DPS characters in the game, in the context of 5-star characters though, right? She does not hold up with 6-star characters, at least, yeah, not in the grand scheme of things. But for 5 stars, Charlie does an incredible amount of damage, more than most others would. And that's already pretty amazing. He will also have the ability to mid-max by playing around this 50% HP threshold, right? But yeah, you don't really have to do that. Just play her together with a character that can buff her, and that's really about it. And then another thing that makes Charlie quite a good and respectable character is her ultimate. So let me unlock that real quick and then show you what it does. There we have it. This is a mass attack. It hits all your enemies and you hit the 300% required, right? Percent of damage that is required. It is the numbers that you would hit. But since it's a mass attack, it hits all of your opponents and it dispels every single buff from your opponent. That includes even the counter statuses. That's also very, very, very respectable. So it's a very solid, a very good main DPS character all around. It has good incantations. Both incantations are pretty good when it comes to dealing damage, what Charlie is here for. And then even even a really good ultimate, like dispelling every single buff from all of your opponents, is pretty respectable. And this ultimate also hits the required numbers. So there you go. Like, there's nothing completely special about Charlie, but again, it is one of the best main DPS characters for 5 stars and hits better numbers than most of them all across the board. And yeah, has this teeny tiny special thing of dispelling every single buff from all enemies at the same time. Although that is with her ultimate, so it's not that overwhelmingly broken or anything, but it's very, very good nonetheless. And that's it about Charlie. You simply use your incantations however you please to they are just there to deal damage. There's no mechanic or something attached to them. And then you use your ult. And that's it, right? Very straightforward. You can just simply spam all your incantations and your ultimate all the time. Every time you have them, you just use them, right? The only thing you want to keep an eye on is that someone of your team buffs Charlie, that Charlie has constantly any buff on her. And that's about it. Now we can move on to BabyBlue. Alright, BabyBlue's insight makes it so that whenever an opponent would deal mental damage to her, she would gain all kinds of resistances to this mental damage. That is, honestly speaking, very, very useless, and nothing you have to keep in mind or anything. Now, her incantation number 1, that's a very important part of her kit. Why exactly? I will tell you later. This is a mass debuff. All of your enemies, they will deal 15% less damage and they will take 15% more damage. So that is already pretty solid. 2 pretty good effects here that everyone benefits from. Then her incantation number 2, that deals 200% mental damage. Good, hits the numbers. But if you would now rank this incantation up, it would unfortunately still only deal, quote-unquote only, deal 200% mental damage, but it would also reduce the mental defense of the opponent that you hit with it by 25%. So that makes it so that if you would want to min-max the value that you get out of everything that BabyBlue does, you would want to play her together with characters that deal mental damage, obviously. But it is not something that is like a requirement or you should definitely do that or something, right? It would just be a little bit of a mid-max and that's about it. Now the reason why BabyBlue is a pretty good character is not only her incantation number 1 especially, but her ultimate is the true kicker here. So let me unlock that real quick and then I will show you what exactly this does. Alright, here we have it. So it's a mass attack. It deals 250% damage, right? The number here is a little bit inflated because of like portraits and everything that's going on, so ignore this. It deals low damage. But if it is a mass attack, first of all, it hits all of your enemies. And if they would be inflicted by a debuff, then you inflict the nightmare status onto all of them. That means they cannot act for 1 round. So you waste an entire complete turn of your entire enemies, of every single enemy. They cannot attack for 1 turn. That is incredible for, of course, the obvious reason you buy yourself a turn, right? And to inflict that debuff that is necessary is no problem because BabyBlue has this debuff herself. So if you have your ultimate, make sure every single opponent of yours is inflicted by a debuff. If there would be an enemy that would not be inflicted by a debuff, boom, you use your incantation number 1, there you go. And then you use your ultimate, and now you buy yourself an entire turn because the enemies cannot act. And this can be really, really incredible. It's already, just by itself, super valuable and very, very good. But you can combine this with other ultimates that also CC your entire enemy team. For example, a character like White Room would be a character like that, or because he stuns all of your enemies. Or a character like Druvis would be a good example, because when you use the ultimate with Druvis, all of your opponents get petrified, and you can cycle this over the span of like 3-4 turns. You can constantly cycle this if you actually play it right, because the character White Room, he has an ability to accumulate additional moxie, so you will be fast enough thanks to that. One turn you use BabyBlue's ultimate to inflict nightmare. Then your opponents will become immune to nightmare for a round. So then next round you petrify them with Druvis ultimate. Now they become immune to petrify for one turn. But now you stun them with White Room, right? And you continue this cycle for very, very long, and you don't let your enemies actually play the game. This can be very, very amazing, and this strategy is actually used in a stage in Reveries in the Rain to cheese a boss completely down. So there you go, right? You just inflict the debuff with BabyBlue.
Some interesting work.
You just use your incantation number 2. That is honestly speaking pretty useless, but it hits the number. So you debuff, you use your incantation number 2, and then you play your other characters. You do this to accumulate moxie, and then you debuff your enemies again with your incantation number 1, and then you inflict nightmare onto everyone, and you buy yourself an entire turn thanks to that. And that's how you play BabyBlue. Now it's time to look at all the Psychubes, the best in slot Psychubes, in fact, for all 3 of those characters. Best in slot Psycube for Bkornblume is Luxurious Lisa. You are all about using your ultimate, and it's a single target ultimate, so every time you use it, you increase your entire damage dealt by 5%. You can do this up to 3 times. It doesn't get more perfect than this for Bkornblume. For BabyBlue, it is that inquisitive deer, because if you look at BabyBlue's incantations, they lack a little bit of juice, you know, they lack this little bit of extra special thing. And to add a heal every time you use a debuff incantation is the most effective route you could go with BabyBlue. For Charlie we have Hopscotch, for the very simple reason that his incantations do a very, very high amount of damage, considering he's a 5-star, right? And this boosts your incantation might even further, and you will be able to get KOs. You will, most of the times, if you KO an opponent and you play Charlie, KO that opponent with Charlie, and by doing so you increase your ultimate might as well. Like, this combination of things is really the perfect thing, and that's why Hopscotch is the best in slot Psychube for Charlie. And that's it for the video, guys. I hope that video was fun and informative. If you like Reverse1999 content in general, please consider leaving a follow on my channel. I would really appreciate it. But until next time, take care of yourselves, have a great day, don't forget to join the Discord server, and we love this game.